It's Thomas Mulready from CoolCleveland.com. We're here at the Magnet Incubator. We're here with Cleveland Whiskey founder Tom Lix. Thank you so much, Tom, for taking time and talking with us.
My pleasure, Thomas.
This is a great place you guys have here.
It is. It's wonderful.
Why did you decide to do it here? What did Magnet do for you?
Oh, Magnet's been great. It's a manufacturing incubator. They've got mechanical engineers, electrical engineers. They helped us build a lot of our equipment. We started with some prototype designs. They've helped us scale it up to production level.
Talk about what you've done here. You've invented really a new process for making whiskey, Cleveland whiskey.
Yes.
We love that name, by the way. Show us what goes into the whiskey over here.
It really starts with the basic grain groups. We've got corn, we've got wheat, we've got rye, and we've got barley. That's what starts a whiskey, whether we're talking about Scotch or bourbon or rye. And right now we're making a bourbon whiskey right here at Cleveland Whiskey.
So talk about the process now.
You take these grains, you bring them over here back to a what we call a mash tun. It's just a big pot. It's steam jacketed. You boil the grains with water in there. You extract the sugars and the starches. You then take that, what you've boiled out, that liquid with the sugar, you bring it over to those 350-gallon fermentation tanks. We've got 3 of those over there. And you add some yeast. You control the temperature, and you make a beer.
Right.
It's not the beer you'd buy at a pub. It's not what you get in a bottle, but it's a corn-based beer for bourbon. You get anywhere from 8 to 12% alcohol. That's what starts the process.
And this, so far, is nothing unusual in your process. Same way that
Same
all
way
whiskeys
that
are
the
made.
distilleries, I mean, there's different scales. The distilleries you'd
Right.
find in Scotland and Kentucky, small craft distillers, all of those, it's the same process. In fact, what we've described so far is what you'd find at a brewery.
Right, to make beer.
Exactly.
Now it becomes whiskey. Walk us through this
okay,
part.
so we take that beer, essentially,
Right.
and we move it over here to our still. This is a relatively small still, but this is where we concentrate the alcohols. We take the beer, we take out the water from that beer in this distillation process. We boil it off. Alcohol boils at a lower temperature than water, so we can separate out the alcohols. This reflux column we have here differentiates between the different types of alcohols, so we can keep the good stuff and get rid of the bad.
So you're really boiling this, and then the alcohol comes off here,
Yeah.
and you leave the water behind in the tank.
We leave the water behind. We end up with something like this. It's a very clear liquid. This was from a bourbon mash. It was much darker in colored when it came off as a beer, but after you distill it, it's clear. This is now 125 proof, which means it's 62.5% alcohol. We started at about 8 to 10%, maybe 12%, brought it up to this with this still.
Again, so far, just like any other process, and now at this point is where you start to diverge.
We do it differently. Normally you take this clear product, this unaged whiskey, and you put it in a barrel. And it's going to sit in a barrel for 8 or 10 or 12 years while it slowly soaks into the pore structure of the wood and then soaks out. 80% of the flavor in a whiskey comes from the oak that's in that barrel. We don't do that. We do it a little bit differently. I'm not that patient to wait for 10 years, and I think we've come up with a process that actually makes for a better whiskey in the end. We take what's this young whiskey, we put it in a stainless steel pressure-capable container. We add wood, the same wood that's used in a barrel. We just have measured amounts that we control very carefully, and we apply pressure. Like squeezing a sponge. You squeeze it and you let it go, you squeeze it and let it go. We apply a lot of pressure, take it down into a vacuum that forces the alcohol deep into the pore structure, forces it back out over and over and over again. Age is irrelevant. What's really happening is we're getting much more exposure. It's nice that it happens in a short period of time, but what really matters is the taste. And we think, of course, the taste is better than keeping it in a barrel for 10 years.
And this is your secret process. This is why you've got this part of it draped to be
That's
over
true.
your shoulder
That's true.
here, right?
That's our intellectual property.
I think it's interesting that this first part of the process you don't actually do here. You're just using these to get yourself your recipes and to test different front ends.
Yeah.
But you're taking this product, shipping it down to Kentucky, where they then ship it back to you in barrels.
Yeah, we craft our recipes here. We use all of this equipment just like baking bread,
Right.
setting the oven temperature, how much wheat, how much water. We're crafting the recipe in terms of the grains and the temperatures we take it off and how we separate out the alcohols. and then we send that down to the larger distilleries that are in Kentucky and Indiana, and have them make this particular clear product.
Right.
Again, according to our recipe,
Yeah.
but we have them make it. It's much more efficient. They've got much larger equipment.
Exactly.
And that allows us to move a lot more product through here and hopefully meet our demand.
And because you have a faster end of the process, it's only 2 days instead of 9 to 16 to 25 years.
Yeah.
You are able to turn out a lot more product a lot more quickly, and it's the kind of quality that you want and the taste that you want. Talk about the different kinds of woods that you might be getting into. You're using oak now.
Well, it's
'cause that's the
interesting. Yeah,
tradition.
we're using American oak. That's traditional flavoring, but we'll certainly experiment as time goes on with other oaks. Apple, pecan, black cherry, all of those types of woods are important. We can do that because we're using stainless steel pressure-capable containers.
Yeah.
You can't make a barrel that won't leak like a sieve out of apple, for instance.
Right.
But apple has some really interesting flavors that we might, excuse me, ultimately add to our product.
Right. Talk about the testing that you did around the name Cleveland whiskey, because we think you just do it out of pride because you love it here. You're from Boston and you're kind of new to the area, if you will. However, you tested that and it rated really highly. Why do you think that was?
You know, it really did. We did over 600 interviews across the country, and Cleveland as a name, as a brand name versus the other ones we tested, came up as the one people were most likely to buy.
Really?
They said it was genuine, it was authentic, it was gritty, it was hardworking, it was entrepreneurial. All of those positive and edgy, and we
edgy.
liked that.
Talk about the edgy part. Where did
Well,
that?
you know, it works great for us because
Yeah.
we're doing something very differently. The industry is they're gonna be skeptics. They're gonna say it's sacrilegious, that it's heretical, which is why we need people to try the whiskey, by the way.
Yeah.
But once they try it, typically people say, hey, this is really good stuff. We like it. Doesn't matter what the experts might say about you having to keep it in a barrel for 12 years. We don't do that.
You're doing some interesting events that aren't the typical kind of events to get people to taste this. And it's interesting to me that you are finding a market in China, in Russia, really in these emerging markets, if you will, where people are starting to drink more whiskey. They are here. I know I've been pulling out my dad's old whiskey sour recipe, and people are surprised at first, but they have a taste and they like it.
Yeah.
And you're finding this too internationally, really.
People are coming back to brown spirits. We've been drinking vodka and flavored vodkas and all those other things. There's a lot more dimension to a whiskey. I think people are finding that. They like sipping it.
Yeah.
It sort of makes sense. And it's just a turn of events, and it's a swing in terms of the culture. A lot of people are drinking whiskey here. They're drinking it in China and mixing it with green tea. That's fine with me, as long as they're drinking whiskey.
That's their 7 and 7 over there,
Exactly.
right? With tea.
Exactly.
Tom, thanks for taking time, showing us your process. Good luck with things.
Thanks.
Stay in touch as you launch here with this new Cleveland whiskey. We're so proud of what you're doing. Thank you.
I'm very happy. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
Hey, it's Thomas Mulready from CoolCleveland.com. We're here at Cleveland Whiskey. Have a great week in cool Cleveland.